I think for me, and probably for a lot of people, you just want to be able to look in the mirror and feel good about the person you see.
Wow, that's great. When you said, when I look in the mirror, I want to be happy with who I see. I just had Michael Jackson's Man in the Mirror. His song was playing in my head the whole time.
Yeah, yeah, Mike was onto something
Right. Yes.
with that
Yes.
song.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Spruill Spotlight. Today we have here with us Miss Tracey Matisak. It's wonderful to have you with us today.
Well, thank you, Kayla. Happy to be here.
All right, so the first thing that I want to ask you about today is I'm not sure if I mentioned this a few weeks ago when we talked on the phone, but could you just tell us a little bit about what it was like for you growing up, and did you always have a good idea of what you wanted to do for a career, or was it just a bit, a bunch of different things that led you into journalism?
Yeah, well, I grew up in Hazleton, Pennsylvania, which is kind of like up around the Poconos. And from the time I was very young, I was interested in dance and theater. And for a while, I thought that was the direction I would go, that I would um, go to New York and hope to get work singing and dancing. I studied dance for a lot of years, the whole time I was growing up. I was in a lot of plays and things like that. Um, my parents, however, were not very enthusiastic about the theater idea because they felt that, look, there's a lot of talented people out here, and, what are the odds that you're going to be one who's really successful at this? So by the time I got to high school, I was still very interested in theater, but also began to develop an interest in public speaking. And I joined the speech and debate team in high school. I was on the speech side of things and really did well at that and was a good writer as well. And the coach of the speech team at one point suggested to me, he said, you should consider broadcast journalism because you're a good communicator, both in writing and in person. And that was a time back in the dark ages when women were really just breaking into broadcast news. So I really started to think about that and ended up for my freshman year, I went to what is now DeSales University. Back then it was Allentown College, but they really did not have, they had a great theater program, but they did not have a journalism program. So after my freshman year, I transferred to Temple for their broadcast journalism program. And that's kind of how things got started for me.
That's great. Now, you mentioned how your parents they said how there are a lot of talented people. Would you say they were supportive of of what you wanted to do as a career, or were they kind of back and forth where it's like, I don't know if this is exactly what we had pictured for you, or were they always there to kind of, whatever you want to do, we'll be here to support you? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I think it was somewhere in the middle, Kayla. I think they were not supportive of the theater idea. And it's not that they didn't believe that I had talent, but I think they were afraid that, there's a lot of talented people out here and, you may wind up like doing some other job, and in order to support yourself, if you want to eat and live indoors, you might have to do something else. My parents really thought that I should go to law school. They seemed to feel like I had the potential to be a good lawyer, but that was not an attractive idea for me because I was much more interested in creative things, in music and dance and art and things like that. So journalism, honestly, was a bit of a compromise in the sense that it still involves an element of performance, right? Because you're still getting up in front of people, whether you're in the studio anchoring the news or you're out reporting or whatever you might be doing. So there was that sort of performance element, and it was a way to also work in, the writing and the speaking skills. And I think for my parents, that felt a little bit safer than, going off to New York and hoping to make a living and hoping to get on Broadway someday.
Mm.
That felt a little bit safer to them. And so it was kind of honestly a compromise. But, I also believe that we end up where we're supposed to be. And while I often wonder, like, what would have happened if I had pursued, theater instead? I feel like my life turned out just fine. So I think it all worked out anyway.
Oh, so I guess that in a way it kind of answers the next thing I wanted to ask you, which was if you ever faced any doubts about whether you were following the right path starting out, or if you were very confident in that you would succeed in this area.
Hmm. Again, it was a little bit of both. I mean, I felt like I had what it took to be successful because I knew I was pursuing something that was in line with my talents.
Mhm.
I'm not sure that law school would have been that for me. So I knew I was doing something that I was already wired to do. But I think I am somebody, like a lot of people and a lot of women in particular, who struggles with imposter syndrome, who always struggled with confidence and will I be good enough, right? Which even now, I struggle with sometimes. So, I kind of knew like, okay, I'm doing something I'm wired to do. I feel like I have the talent for this, but will it be enough? Will I be enough? Will I be good enough? So I think I was sort of, you teeter back and forth between like, yeah, I got this, and oh, I'm not sure I got this.
Mm.
Um, and so you sort of learn to strike a balance. And I think the more experience you get, it's like anything else, right? The more you do it, the more confident you become, the better you get at it, which is not to say that I don't still every now and then struggle with, am I good enough? And do I have enough confidence to do this? But the more you do it, the more comfortable and confident you become.
Yeah, I can attest to that, especially when it comes to public speaking. I was never comfortable with giving any kind of presentation in front of even if it was a small group of people. I was never comfortable until I kept practicing and I kept, putting myself in those situations to where I was able to kind of take notes on what I could do better and, just slowly but surely improve in that area. And I also want to say thank you so much for sharing how you said you struggle with imposter syndrome, which something that I can kind of relate to, and how I sometimes feel as though, am I good enough to be in this position or in this area? And also when it comes to maybe there'll be times where you might compare yourself to other people,
Oh
maybe
yeah.
what other people are doing, and then you just kind of have to find a way to kind of just get back to who am I as a person and what can I do to bring something unique to the table, something that not no one else has brought to what I'm doing. And I think that really helps to kind of bring in that confidence that you need to continue to succeed in that way. Um, Now, I've read a lot that you've interviewed a ton of influential individuals, including late civil rights activist Harry Belafonte, Simone Biles, James Comey, and former Prime Minister Theresa May, among many
Mhm.
others. Yet you seem very down to earth. What are some things that you do to really stay humble?
Oh my. Well, look, at the end of the day, I'm a mom and a wife, and like real life is what happens when I'm not working, right? And I've been really blessed and fortunate to meet some incredible people over the course of my career. But at the end of the day, like I shop at Target, right? I buy groceries, I clean my house. And I also, I mentioned about dancing. Tap dancing is one of my passions, and I've recently started doing that again. I've been taking some tap classes. Took a long break from that to get married and raise a family and have a career. But I think real life happens when you're off the air,
Mm.
and that's what really matters is, like what's your relationship like with your family and your friends, and what kinds of things do you do that bring you joy outside of work, and I think it's really important to cultivate those things, because work can be wonderful and I've certainly had some great opportunities, but like any job has its challenges, any job has its letdowns. And I think if you put all of your eggs in that basket and you sort of, your identity becomes wrapped up in what you do, you can set yourself up for disappointment. So, I feel like it's the best stuff happens sometimes, outside of work.
I really like that. And that's actually encouraging to me because I'm the type of person who I'm always looking for what's next and, trying to prepare for, future events and opportunities to where I may forget to kind of live in the present and
Yeah,
enjoy the present moment. And even with the little mishaps that happen in everyday life, those kinds of things are what makes us human, and
that's
they
right.
keep us humble and they help us to remember, we may not have it all together, but I'm doing what I can to improve and get better every day. So I thank you so much for sharing that. That actually helps me to, to remind myself to, enjoy every little moment and, just take in uh, the joys of everyday life.
Yeah,
Um,
I think we all need to do that, right? I think,
yeah.
I certainly haven't mastered it, but I think, yeah, there's something to be said for just enjoying the present moment and not always thinking ahead to what's the next thing I have to do, and just sort of enjoying life as it unfolds.
Yeah. And I also want to ask you about what are some things that you might do to kind of, or what are some ways that you like to take time for yourself and kind of relax and after a hard day? What are some of the things you do?
Love to read. I am, you can see I got some books here behind me. I am an avid reader, so that's a big thing for me. I mentioned tap dancing, which I've, taken up again, and it just brings me so much joy. I also love to walk, like
Mm.
when it's not blistering hot like it's been. I typically walk most days, and there's something about just getting outside, getting some sunshine and fresh air, and seeing nature that really is soothing for my soul, I would say.
Mm.
I also love a good movie and just love spending time like with my friends, with my kids when I get to see them, my husband, just hanging out with the people closest to me. I think all of those things are really good stress relievers and things that sort of fill you up again after you feel kind of drained from life.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like how you incorporate a lot of physical activity. I
Hmm.
once read that when you're working or when you have a job, it's great to do something that's pretty much not related to what you have to do. So like you mentioned Um
Hmm.
tap dancing and journalism, it doesn't always go together, but it
They
helps you
don't
to.
necessarily go together, different parts of the brain, right?
Yeah, but it helps to, get your mind off it and, just take away that stress and, even just, physical activity is important. I try to do it too. I like to exercise and everything because
Yeah.
I mean, it's good for the body and again, it's good for the mind and it just helps to, just keep you relaxed and, but that's great. That's very important. And let's see. Oof. Um, oh, something else that I read is that you were a part of a television program called Mind Over Matter, and it was very focused on mental health. Could you share a little bit about what made you want to become a part of that?
Sure. Several reasons, actually. Mind Over Matter is a show about mental health, particularly in the age of COVID, when most of us came through the pandemic and realized that we were struggling with anxiety or depression or both, or some other mental health issue. from the trauma of that collective experience.
Hmm.
And so, and look, I have had my own struggles, honestly, with anxiety, with depression in the past. And so I felt like this was a way to combine my, uh, professional skills, right, in journalism with something that was really near and dear to my heart, which is helping other people who may be struggling with anxiety or depression or some other mental health issue. So it was a way to kind of combine, something that I really could relate to with the professional gifts that I have and hopefully help some people. Mind Over Matter is a show that is produced by WVIA, which is the public television station up in Scranton, Wilkes-Barre in Northeast Pennsylvania. And it's underwritten by Geisinger Medical Center. Geisinger is kind of like the University of Penn of that part of Pennsylvania. And so we've done the show now for 3 years. We're hoping that there might be a fourth season.
Hmm.
And there was also a podcast that went with that. We did a 24 episode podcast and explored a lot of different mental health issues. But I just felt like it was really timely because so many of us were struggling,
Hmm.
especially coming through the pandemic. So it was timely, it was relatable, and it was a way to use my professional background for something that I hoped could help some people. So it was a win-win in that respect.
No, you mentioned it was relatable. How important is it for you to stay, um, or to just do something that helps you to kind of relate to the audience that you're speaking with? Like, what are some things that remind you to say, I'm talking about this one thing, and the audience may not know a whole lot about it, but what are some ways you can make it relatable to whatever they might be going through?
Yeah, I think that's a part of what makes for good journalism or a good interview is knowing your audience and thinking about what would they want to know, right? What would they want to get out of this? How can I help them get the most out of this conversation? And I've done interviews with people who are experts in areas that I know nothing about, and I've had to do a lot of homework to just try to bring myself up to speed to some degree and be able to have an intelligent conversation with them. And so sometimes that's a good thing when you go into an interview with someone on a topic that you don't know a lot about, because chances are your audience doesn't either. And so you can kind of ask the questions that the average person who might not be an expert in, say, climate change, um, but might want to know about. So I think sometimes that can be an advantage. It's also nice to have an opportunity to talk with someone who, works in an area that I am interested in and I do know a little something about. I get excited about that because, there's things that I want to know from that person, sort of like insider type stuff.
Mhm.
But I do think it's important to always keep your audience in mind, because it's not about you. It's about creating a good learning experience for the people who are watching or listening to that conversation and thinking about what would benefit them most. What do they need to get out of this conversation and sort of structuring it with them in mind.
And do you have any favorite interviews or moments or would you say your favorite interviews come from the things that you don't know a lot about, or is it the moments
Hmm.
where you already know a whole lot about the topic?
Yeah, not necessarily. Like one of my favorite interviews of all time was with Brian Stevenson. In fact, his picture is over my shoulder right here, and his book is next to it, Just Mercy.
Hmm.
Um, so, and of course, the movie Just Mercy came out a few years ago. It's all about, criminal justice and
Yeah,
the death penalty, people being on death row who were not supposed to be on death row. And
yeah.
Brian has been an absolutely brilliant advocate in criminal justice reform. He is one of my personal heroes, and I had an opportunity to hear him speak and then interview him on the back end of that. And I was just so impressed with him, so taken by him. And this was all before the movie came out or anything. I had read the book, but he's just one of my personal heroes. Had an opportunity to interview Ken Burns, the documentarian. He does a lot of PBS documentaries. And that was a thrill for me because I'd seen a lot of his documentaries, and just being able to sit down with him was like a dream come true.
Mm.
So there have been a number of people like that. I mean, Simone Biles, look, when I was, uh, 8, 10, 12 years old, I was really into gymnastics because of the Olympics back then, and took gymnastics lessons and loved all of that. And so it was, thrilling to sit down with somebody like her and just, I so admire someone who has that level of discipline and just mental strength, to say nothing of her physical conditioning. Um, so yeah, it doesn't really matter if it's not someone who's in an area that I know a whole lot about, but it's always a lot of fun if it's someone who I just know something about them, or I feel like I know them because I've seen them on TV or I've read their books, and so that's always a thrill.
That's great. Now the next thing I want to talk to you about was the Arthur event program. And I know
Mhm.
that recently it was shut down. Can you share a little bit about what happened and whether you believe there's a chance of it restarting again?
Yeah, oh, I really hope it will. I don't know a lot about the behind the scenes of what happened there. It was very unfortunate because that program, it was the Free Library Author Event Series. That program has been such a gem for the city of Philadelphia because they had these incredible authors who would come to the library, and they would either, speak for a while and then take audience questions, or they would sit down with an interviewer like me or any number of other people, and have a conversation and then answer audience questions. And it was a tremendous opportunity, often free, for people to come and hear people like Harry Belafonte, like Simone Biles, Jennifer Lewis, the actress, was one of the people who was there. Congressman Adam Schiff is one of the people that I interviewed for the Free Library. Dan Rather from CBS News. I mean, like this list of luminaries, these incredible people. So I see it as a huge loss, for the city of Philadelphia, but I do hope that the library will be able to, recreate something like that, to have some sort of program, or that someone else will pick up that idea, because it was such a wonderful thing. And people came to those events. There were nights when people just packed out the library. In fact, sometimes they had to move it to a different venue because there were
Wow.
so many people that would come. But it was just such an enriching experience for people to hear these authors, to learn something, maybe that they didn't know, to maybe meet somebody that they've admired from a distance for a long time. I mean, it was certainly a thrill for me. So yes, I don't know a lot about what all happened there, but I sure hope that, that they're able to figure out a way to do something like that again.
I do too. That sounds super exciting. I hope
Yeah,
if it does come back, I'll be able to attend one of those events because I would love to see all of those people.
yeah.
Um, all right, so we have a few minutes left here. Could you just share a piece of advice that you'd like to give to viewers on how they can make a difference in their community, even in the smallest way?
I think that's an excellent question. Look, one person can make a difference, and I think sometimes we tend to feel like, oh, I'm just one person, what can I do? But I think that there's something out here for all of us. There is something that every one of us can do to help somebody else, whether that's volunteering in some way, whether it's, like in the case of the mental health show I was talking about, combining my skills with something that I'm passionate about and something that has some healing quality to it, for other people as well as myself, because I benefited from doing that. But I just think it's intentional. It's important for all of us to think beyond ourselves, to think about, like, why am I here really? Right? It's
Mhm.
not just to have a career. It's not just to, go to college and be successful in your work. It's not just to goof around. It's, hopefully, before we leave here, we've done something that leaves somebody else better than we found them.
Yeah.
So the challenge is to find that thing, right? And there's so many opportunities out here, whether it's, volunteering with charities or getting involved politically, if that's your passion. And boy, are we living in a time when when that becomes important.
Yeah.
But thinking about like what what are you passionate about? What, gets you out of bed in the morning? What makes you really angry, maybe? What is something that you just spend a lot of time thinking about? And usually that's a good clue about a way that you can help somebody else, or where have you suffered, right? Because there's a saying that like your mess becomes your ministry, and sometimes the things that we've been through
Mhm.
um, become an opportunity for us to channel that into helping other people who are struggling with the same things. So, there's lots of ways to get there. I think it's just being intentional and thinking about like, what's a way that I can leave somebody else better than I found them? And I think once you make that decision that you want to do that, like opportunities start popping up.
Mm. I like that. I like the whole your mess becomes your ministry. That might be my new model.
There
My
you
new
go.
motto. Yeah. And I like how you just mentioned that even when what you said that something that makes you angry, and we know that anger can be something that helps to channel whatever you have a passion for.
It's a good
So
motivator.
yeah, it's a great motivator. So I feel like, if people just find whatever it is, like you mentioned, if there's something that they spend a lot of time thinking about, and maybe that could be something that could grow into a way that you can maybe make the world a better place. And again, it doesn't have to be like this huge thing. It could be even just making someone's day, buying them a coffee, who knows, whatever it
Absolutely.
is.
You can't underestimate the power of small things,
Yeah.
right? Just, like giving someone a sincere smile or asking how they are and waiting to hear what they say,
Hmm.
making somebody feel seen. Like you have no idea, we have no idea what people might be going through on any given day. And sometimes the littlest things
Right.
have the biggest impact, right? Which is why it's important to just be aware of that you know, um, and seize those opportunities to do the little things.
Yeah, and also to be genuine as you're doing it, because people can sense whether you're actually doing it because you want to, or if you're just doing it, just to
Yeah,
do it, So it's important also to have integrity in that way. And speaking of integrity, what are the last thing I want to ask you, what are some ways that you try to keep your integrity and just do the right thing, even if no one is watching?
Hmm. So I think, one question that I ask myself, if you're in a situation where, maybe you could cut some corners or maybe you could not really put in the full effort or whatever it might be, is, what's the story I want to tell 5 years from now? Right? Like, what's the story I want to be able to tell about this? Or, to your point, like, I think a big measure of a person's character is what they do when no one is looking.
Hmm.
Do you do the right thing when nobody's going to know one way or the other? You know, and I think if you are a person of faith, then you say to yourself, well, maybe nobody's watching, but God knows,
Hmm.
and that in itself might be enough,
Right.
for you to walk the straight and narrow. So, yeah, I think it's just a measure of character. What do we do when nobody's looking? And I think for me, and probably for a lot of people, you just want to be able to look in the mirror and feel good about the person you see, you
Mm.
know, and um, and that in itself can make you decide, you know what, I could take the easy way out of this, but let me just do this right because I will sleep better,
Yeah.
if I do the right thing. And I feel like just, taking the easy way out, sometimes it can catch up with you. If nothing else, you don't feel as good about yourself. So it's that, and it's like, hey, what's like 5 years from now? What's the story I want to tell about how I handled this situation?
Mm.
And sometimes that can help point you in the right direction.
Wow. That's great. When you said, when I look in the mirror, I want to be happy with who I see. I just had Michael Jackson's Man in the Mirror. His song was playing in my head the whole time.
Yeah, yeah, Mike was onto something
Right. Yes.
with that
Yes.
song.
Yes. All
Yeah.
right. So, that's all the time we have for today. I just want to say thank you so much, Miss Tracy, for talking with me today. I learned a whole lot, and hopefully, those watching have also learned a whole lot. Are there any last questions that you want to ask me or share with the viewers?
I don't have any questions, Caleb, but I want to thank you because this conversation has been an absolute delight. You are a young lady who is wise beyond your years. I wish I had your wisdom at your age. My life might have gone, a little bit better, but you're a very wise young lady, and I just want to wish you the best in all of your endeavors. I feel like you're well on your way, and there are big things in store for you. So I just appreciate, the opportunity to sit down and chat a little bit.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it.